June 1983, Rome. The temperature is pushing 104 degrees Fahrenheit. A 15-year-old girl steps out of her flute lesson, stands at a bus stop on Corso Rinascimento, and chats with a friend. Multiple witnesses see her. Her friend boards the bus, turns around for one last wave. The girl is gone. 42 years have passed. Her body has never been found. In that time, the investigation has pulled in the Italian mafia, the Vatican bank, an assassination attempt on the Pope, secret burials beneath a basilica altar, testimony from a mob boss's girlfriend, and a man who walked into a police station 30 years later and said, "I did it." And still, no answers. Welcome to the case of Emanuela Orlandi. Emanuela Orlandi was born on January 14, 1968, the fourth of 5 children of Ercole Orlandi, a clerk at the prefecture of the pontifical household. The family didn't just live in Rome, they lived inside Vatican City, within the actual walls of the Holy See. Her brother Pietro described their childhood this way. The Vatican gardens were available to us as if it was our own back garden. We felt we were in the safest place in the world. That summer, school was out, but Emanuela continued taking flute lessons 3 times a week at the Tommaso Ludovico da Vittoria Music School in Piazza Sant'Apollinare, just steps from Piazza Navona. She also sang in the choir at the Vatican's own Sant'Anna dei Palafrenieri Church. On June 22, 1983, around 4 p.m., Emanuela left the apartment for her lesson. It was brutally hot. She asked her brother Pietro to drive her. He had other plans and said no. "I've gone over it so many times," he said decades later, telling myself, if only I had driven her, maybe none of this would have happened. She arrived late to class. Around 7 p.m., she called her sister, Federica. She told her that on the way to school, a man had approached her and offered her a job, handing out promotional flyers at a fashion show on behalf of the Avon Cosmetics company. Good money. Federica said, "Talk to Mom and Dad first." Emanuela agreed. That was the last time anyone in her family heard her voice. After the lesson, she walked out to the bus stop on Corso Rinascimento. She was with her friend Raffaella Monzi and another classmate, Maria Grazia. She told them the same story about the Avon offer. Then Raffaella noticed that Emanuela was standing next to an unknown girl, a girl whose identity has never been established to this day. The bus arrived at 7:20 p.m. Maria Grazia and Raffaella got on. Raffaella turned around to wave goodbye. Emanuela was no longer at the stop. One witness reported seeing her get into a large, dark-colored BMW. After that moment, no confirmed sighting of Emanuela Orlandi exists anywhere on record. When she hadn't come home by midnight, the family called the police. By the next morning, her photograph covered walls across Rome. For the first 2 weeks, the investigation looked like a standard missing persons case. Then, on July the 3rd, 1983, 11 days after Emanuela vanished, something happened that changed everything. During the Sunday Angelus address at St. Peter's Square, Pope John Paul II personally addressed the crowd. He expressed his deepest sympathies to the Orlandi family, then added that he had not lost hope in the humanity of those who bear responsibility. Think about that sentence carefully. There had been no official announcement of a kidnapping. No ransom demand had been made public. No confirmation of foul play. And yet the Pope of the Catholic Church, the head of a sovereign state, was standing before tens of thousands of people and appealing to those who bear responsibility. That statement told the world one thing. The Vatican knew far more than it was saying. Almost immediately after, anonymous calls began reaching the Orlandi family. The callers knew details the police had never released to the press, including the exact make of the flute Emanuela had been carrying that evening. A Ramponi e Cazzani model, in a red velvet case. One caller identified himself as a teenager named Pierluigi. Another spoke with an American accent and called himself the American. Then a demand appeared. Emanuela would be released only if Italy freed Mehmet Ali Agca, the Turkish gunman who had shot and wounded Pope John Paul II in St. Peter's Square in 1981 and who was currently serving a life sentence in an Italian prison. Italian intelligence pursued the terrorism angle hard. There was talk of a KGB connection, a Bulgarian network, a Cold War operation. But a senior officer from the Italian Secret Service eventually stated on record, the terrorism was a smokescreen. There was no strategy, no organization behind it. This was covering up something that happened inside the Vatican itself. To understand the next layer of this case, you need to go back 1 year, to June 1982. On June 18th, 1982. A body was found hanging from scaffolding beneath Blackfriars Bridge in London. Hands bound, pockets stuffed with 11 pounds of bricks and thousands of dollars in mixed currencies, a false passport in the name of Gianni Calvini. The dead man was Roberto Calvi, chairman of Banco Ambrosiano, Italy's largest private bank. The press called him God's banker because of his intimate ties to the Vatican. Shortly before his death, $1.3 billion had disappeared from the bank, funneled through shell companies in Panama, backed by letters of guarantee signed by Archbishop Paul Marcinkus. Marcinkus was an American from Illinois, a former bodyguard to the Pope, and the president of the Vatican Bank, formerly known as the Institute for Religious Works, or IOR. When Italian magistrates issued an arrest warrant for Marcinkus in 1987 for complicity in fraudulent bankruptcy, the Vatican closed like a fortress. Marcinkus sheltered behind the walls of the Holy See. Italian jurisdiction couldn't touch him. He was never arrested, never tried. In the end, the Vatican paid $244 million to Ambrosiano's creditors, officially described as a voluntary contribution in recognition of moral involvement. Calvi's personal secretary jumped from her office window shortly before his death, leaving a note condemning him. His own death was initially ruled a suicide, then reclassified as murder. 5 people were eventually charged with his killing. In 2007, all 5 were acquitted. Insufficient evidence. This is the financial wreckage sitting directly beneath the Orlandi case. The Banda della Maliana was one of Rome's most violent criminal organizations in the 1970s and 80s. Their leader was Enrico De Pedis, known as Renatino. According to investigators, the gang had laundered money through the Vatican Bank, and when Banco Ambrosiano collapsed, the mafia lost enormous sums. Someone had to answer for that. De Pedis was shot dead on a Roman street in February 1990. And here's the first glaring anomaly. After his death, he was buried in the crypt of the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare, the same basilica located directly next to the music school Emanuela attended. That crypt is a burial site reserved for cardinals, martyrs, and senior figures of the church. No official explanation for why a mafia boss received this honor has ever been given. Then, in 2005, during a live broadcast of the Italian missing persons show, Chi l'ha visto? With Pietro Orlandi in the studio, an anonymous viewer called in. The voice said, "To solve the Orlandi case, find out who is buried in the crypt of the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare, and what favor Enrico De Pedis once did for Cardinal Poletti." Italy erupted. Investigators opened De Pedis' tomb in May 2012, collected DNA samples. No trace of Emanuela, but alongside De Pedis' remains, investigators found bones belonging to several unidentified individuals. Who they were and how they got there has never been explained. In 2006, a woman named Sabrina Minardi came forward to Rome prosecutors. She had been De Pedis' girlfriend from 1982 to 1984, the exact window of Emanuela's disappearance. Her testimony was explosive. Bear in mind, investigators found inconsistencies in her account, particularly around dates. The Vatican officially called her claims of extremely doubtful value. With that caveat stated, here's what she told prosecutors. According to Minardi, De Pedis organized the kidnapping on the orders of Archbishop Marcinkus, as leverage over unpaid debts connected to the Vatican Bank. She said she personally saw Emanuela in a car shortly after the abduction. De Pedis asked her to drive the girl to her family's house in Torvajanica, a coastal town about 30 miles from Rome. Emanuela remained there for approximately 10 days, sedated for much of that time. She was then moved to an apartment in Rome's Monteverde neighborhood. Minardi also told investigators that she had personally delivered cash to Marcinkus in Louis Vuitton bags, that De Pedis had asked her to drive Emanuela to the Janiculum Hill, where a priest arrived in a black car with Vatican plates, dressed, in Minardi's words, in a tunic with small buttons down the front, and took the girl away, and that Emanuela was ultimately killed, her body disposed of in a cement mixer in Torvajanica. Again, these are her claims. Investigators found contradictions. The Vatican dismissed them, but they were serious enough that Rome prosecutors formally reopened the investigation in 2008 on their basis. In 2013, 30 years after the disappearance, a man walked into a prosecutor's office in Rome. His name was Marco Accetti, a photographer, then 58 years old, and he said, "I was involved." Accetti claimed he was a member of a clandestine group operating under the protection of a faction inside the Vatican. According to his account, the kidnapping of Emanuela and of Mirella Gregori, another teenage girl who vanished from Rome 46 days earlier, was an internal pressure operation targeting Pope John Paul II. The goal: force the Pope to soften his hardline anti-communist stance during the Cold War. This, Accetti said, was not street crime. It was a political operation conducted from within the church. He claimed to be the person who had made the anonymous calls to the Orlandi family under the names Mario and the American. He claimed to have personally arranged Emanuela's removal from the music school. He said the kidnapping was originally meant to be temporary, that both girls were taken with their consent, but that things got worse. Prosecutors were deeply skeptical. They found his account unreliable. Rome's prosecutor's office in the second investigation formally categorized him as a non-credible witness. But there was one thing that couldn't be ignored. Eccetti produced a flute. The flute was identified by Emanuela's family as hers, a Ramponi Cazzani model in a red velvet case, a specific detail the police had never made public. Investigators ran voice analysis on the 1983 anonymous call recordings. The results were inconclusive. In January 2026, Italy's parliamentary commission summoned Eccetti to testify. He agreed to appear. In 2018, the Orlandi family received an anonymous letter. It told them to search the Teutonic Cemetery inside Vatican City to look where an angel statue pointed. The Vatican granted permission. In July 2019, investigators opened 2 tombs. Both were empty, but inside, they found bones belonging to multiple unidentified individuals. Who they are and why they were there remains officially unexplained. In January 2023, following the release of the Netflix documentary series Vatican Girl, the Vatican opened its own investigation into Emanuela's disappearance for the first time in the case's history. Vatican prosecutor Alessandro Didi conducted interviews with current and former Vatican officials and reviewed archival materials. In June 2023, exactly 40 years after the disappearance, Didi forwarded all materials to Rome prosecutors, stating he had found investigative leads worthy of further examination. In November 2023, the Italian Senate voted to establish a bicameral parliamentary commission of inquiry into both the Orlandi and Gregori cases, with full investigative powers and an annual budget of €50,000. Then, in March 2025, a confidential memo surfaced, a document from Italian intelligence dated 1983. It recorded that investigators at the time suspected the Vatican may have already paid a ransom to the kidnappers and concealed it from the investigation. The Orlandi family's attorney immediately demanded full disclosure of the Vatican's files on the case. The Vatican confirmed that a dossier exists. Its contents remain classified. Parliamentary hearings are ongoing as of 2026. So, what do we know for certain? Emanuela Orlandi disappeared on June 22, 1983. She was 15 years old. Witnesses saw her get into a dark car at a bus stop near Piazza Navona. Her body has never been recovered. No one has ever been convicted of anything in connection with her disappearance. What we also know, a mafia boss is buried in the basilica next to her music school, with no official explanation. The president of the Vatican Bank was connected to a billion-dollar fraud involving organized crime, and was protected from arrest by the Vatican itself. The Pope personally addressed her kidnappers from St. Peter's Square before any kidnapping was officially confirmed. A 1983 intelligence memo suggests the Vatican paid a ransom and hid it. A man produced her flute 30 years later and said he was there. 2 Vatican tombs held bones of unknown people, and the Vatican's own dossier on the case remains sealed. Her mother still lives in the same apartment inside Vatican City. Pietro Orlandi, the brother who didn't drive her that afternoon, has spent his entire adult life demanding answers. He has written books, testified before Parliament, given thousands of interviews. He says it plainly. The Vatican knows what happened to Emanuela, and it is staying silent. He is in his 70s now. He is still waiting. If you want to follow up, in 1983, another girl disappeared from Rome. Mirella Gregori, 46 days before Emanuela. Her case is being investigated by the same parliamentary commission. Officially 2 separate incidents, but nearly every theory in the Orlandi case names them as connected.